I used to think that I had a really robust yellow recipe for my Imperial fists. Problem is, it relied on an airbrush and a bunch of paints that I don't have anymore. So I went on a bit of an odyssey to find a new yellow recipe, and boy, did I struggle. I did end up getting a nice result, but it took me a full day of mucking about to get there. I figured I'd graciously share this journey with you, since it is festive season after all. Get it? Festive? Kill me. If you're just here for the yellow recipe, that's okay. If you don't want to join me on this fun, exciting journey, I have timestamped the recipe that I settled on. But if you're a nice, kind person who wants to enjoy some light-hearted commentary from your new favourite YouTuber, then come with me and let's traverse the horrible world of painting yellow. Any sane person would probably just go to Colourforge and buy their Sunset Yellow spray, or Army Painter's Demonic Yellow, or Army Painter's Desert Yellow, or AK's Praetorian Yellow, or MIG's Imperial Yellow, and just use that as their base, right? But Muggins here didn't have a yellow spray can to hand. Well, I did, but it was the Montana one, and it was old, and we all know what happened when I sprayed that on my Stormcast. So, is that an aeroplane? Yes, I could go and buy a yellow spray and make everyone's life easier, including my own. But life isn't just about buying things. Sometimes you have to take a journey. Let's take that journey now. First point of call was some easy to build intercessors I picked up on eBay. First mistake. So I primed one with Grey Sear, second mistake, and decided I'd try volcanic yellow straight on the white. Third mistake. Now, the easy to build Marines were blue plastic, and the Grey Sear is a colder prime. So both of those things meant that there was just absolutely no warmth in the colours already, and adding yellow to blue tones means green. You can see, even with this AK paint, which has pretty good covering power, I was getting serious green tones, especially in the shadows. So, like an absolute idiot, I assumed it was the paint, and figured maybe Contrast Imperial Fists, the saviour of all yellow painters the world over, was the answer. And I promptly did the other leg with that. More green, same problem. Now, wrongly, I assumed it just needed more coats. So I gave both legs a second coat in their respective paints. And an interesting thing happened. Hi, Editing Alex here. Turns out I actually did 3 coats on all of these. I was just looking through the footage and my voiceover says 2 coats. It was 3. It doesn't really make much difference, the points are still the same, but 3 coats nonetheless. For clarity, there you go. While the contrast paint more or less remained the same, the yellow paint did get brighter and more yellow. So in a way, we learned something here. Not how to do yellow, but that yellow paint can be built up to cover better, while contrast is more or less a one and done solution, and if you don't get a good colour first time, then more coats isn't necessarily going to improve things much. Now, after wrongly assuming that it was the white, I primed the next 2 Marines black, and I made sure to cover the blue up with some brushed on black primer. But what I'd heard was that the pink would be suitable as a base coat for yellow, since it would offset the green tones and give a better yellow overall. I have always been a bit suspicious of this, so I decided I'd test it first. A test for my test Marines. I grabbed tarotmodelmaker.com's test panel, and this is the other side of the one I used for my faces video, and I slapped a bit of pale pink on there. Now when that had dried, I tried both the yellow paint and also the yellow contrast over it, and the paint turned out really nice, while the contrast was a bit too orange in my opinion. So what I realised was that I'd probably have to do some pink undercoating to get a nice yellow and offset the cool tones of the black. Now, again, like any sane person, I'd probably go and find a pink spray, like Army Painter Pixie Pink, and just use that, or just pop the pink in my airbrush. But I am not a sane person, not when it comes to yellow painting it seems. My brain went, okay, Wraithbone is a yellow tone of primer, so let's do a heavy zenithal of that over the black. And also, let's try Zandri Dust over the other marine. Both of these colours will make yellow easier. Not content with that, I also decided I'd do a Seraphim Sepia wash over the Wraithbone to darken the recesses. Now, I tried straight up yellow on the shoulder pad after that, but again, it wasn't sitting right, so I figured I'd crack out the pink and see if that helped. I just went for the single coat of pink because it was just to get that tint. I didn't need it to have proper coverage or to be completely opaque. Now when that was dry, I finally jumped in with the yellow, and this time it went on really nicely. Very little green, except of course in the darkest recesses, and it became far richer even with just a single coat. I compared it to the 3 coats of yellow that I'd done before, just over white, and it was easily on par, but I think in many ways it was stronger. A second coat also brought it up even more nicely, but I was still of course seeing green in the shadows where that black was still coming through. So at this point, instead of spending ages layering things up, I tried a dry brush approach, and I went with dirty yellow and then deep yellow, and then to finish it off I used pale sand to catch the edges. Then I went in again with Seraphim Sepia to darken the recesses, and this actually might be the most sane version of the yellow recipe, although I could definitely cut a few of those steps out. Now, let's go back and look at the marine that I'd given a zenithal coat of Zandri Dust. Oh my god, these words are so difficult to say. In my idiot brain, I was thinking that it's more of a yellow tone and that might help, and then proceeded to wash the model with Agrak's Earthshade to really darken the recesses. Now, I don't know if this was a good idea, but I wanted to build contrast for the shadows. I obviously figured Zandri Dust was also quite dark, so I thought before I'd get involved with the yellow, I'd dry brush up to lighter tones, and so I cracked out Verminlord Hide, Golthag Brown and Tyrant Skull. Now the first two got a pretty heavy dry brush on, but Tyrant Skull just was not playing ball. I also tried Hexos Pale Sun, but it was also not giving me what I wanted. Honestly, I think both of those paint pots were a bit fucked, so I resorted to AK's Pale Sand in the end, and I managed to get a better finish with that as a dry brush. So, with all that sorted, I figured now going in with Volcanic Yellow would be fine, and would probably end up being excellent. Alas, I was wrong, again. Immediately, it felt like it was just going green, and I ended up just getting super frustrated. I actually stormed over to the airbrush booth and using Squid Pink and then Sun Yellow over the top just to get something, but because it was all so dark in the first place, the whole thing just basically ended up coming out this super deep orangey yellow, which was absolutely not what I wanted. So, what better idea than to slap on some more Volcanic Yellow over the top again and see if that helped. Like, I'd absolutely lost the plot by this point, and I just couldn't get past the fact that everything else also looked orange, even though the yellow was maybe a little bit better by now. So it was at this point I was about to give up, basically. I was ready to give up. The dry brushing had gone a bit awry, and after all that effort, the yellow was still coming out green. I had one further idea, which was probably also ill-advised, but here we are nonetheless. I reprimed the first marine that I'd done just the legs on with more grey cere, which, as you can see, started looking a bit thick. It obscured some detail, and really it was still retaining some of that yellow tint from before. However, I thought maybe the pink painting section could be sped up, so I got some contrast Volupus Pink. I watered it down about 4 or 5 to 1 with contrast medium, because normally it's quite a sort of magenta-y colour, and I slapped it on all over, making sure that it didn't pull too much on the big flat areas. When that had dried, I went in with contrast Imperial Fists in the hope that I'd be onto a winner. I was not onto a winner. It was too patchy, and it was too orangey, and even that diluted contrast pink did not work. So I'd been messing about with these, going back and forth, and although I've presented these to you in the order that makes sense, I was working on all three of them simultaneously, and I just felt like I had this muddle of recipes in my head. Now, I kind of had written all the things down that I'd done, and what I decided to do was build one last proper Intercessor, not an easy to build one, and make a concerted effort to find the right yellow recipe, working with all of that practice that I'd done so far. Firstly, of course, I pinned 3 sub-assemblies, and then I went out back and I sprayed them with Wraithbone. A light but warm-toned primer, no zenithal, no black, no dark tones. Hi, Editor Alex here again. That was a massive lie, the whole no zenithal, no black, no dark tones. I did actually do Zandri Dust first. Looking at the footage, it's quite clear to me that I just forgot when I was writing the script. I did it yesterday and my memory's not great, but basically this was a zenithal of Zandri Dust first to get that like dark-ish mid-tone, and then Wraithbone over the top of that, but quite heavily, so there wasn't much of the Zandri Dust showing through. That's the prime that you've just seen there. I'll show it again very quickly, just so that you can see it with my voice here, like that. In fact, there, you can see it on the screen, right? Let's... Wraithbone over Zandri Dust, okay? Facts. Don't ever say that I'm a liar, okay? When that was done, I painted the armour pink. No washing before that, just pink. It felt ludicrous, but I had to trust this process. Now, before doing the yellow, I put in some of the black areas of things like the under armour. Since any mistakes meant less fixing to do, mistakes would just mean a coat of white and then another coat of pink, as opposed to white, pink and yellow. Now, sensible folks among you would point out that I could have done the black parts over the Wraithbone primer, and you would be right. Gold star for you. The next step was the yellow. Volcanic yellow first. 1 coat already looked great, but 2 coats came up beautifully over the pink, not a hint of green in sight. So after that, I added some dirty yellow, which is just a little lighter than that volcanic yellow, and just built some of the volumes on the model. Now, it looks subtle, and you could probably skip this step for tabletop quality, but I wanted a bit of finesse if I was going to do this yellow properly. The next step up was AK's Deep Yellow, one of their intense colours, and it was a more noticeable jump up, but with some glazing and careful placement. This was only really used on the upward facing areas. And finally, I edged it all in pale sand, which ended up just giving a really nice finish. I darkened the recesses with Agrax Earthshade, and I was reasonably careful here to avoid tide lines or coffee staining, but again, that was cleaned up a little bit with some more of the yellow. I also tidied up some of the black bits again, and that was us. A much better yellow armour, and it only took me an entire day to figure out that my initial instinct to paint pink underneath was probably the right approach. As you can see, I went ahead and painted the rest of the owl. I used my red recipe from the Blood Angels video for the Aquila, and I just went with simple black with grey edges for the gun, dark metal and silver highlight for the metal parts, and I painted the eyes white and then used contrast Croxagore scales for those. Alright, am I happy with the fist? There's a sentence that I did not think I would ever necessarily say. Am I happy with the fist? Are you happy with the fist? Is anybody happy with the fist? Am I happy with the fist? Well, yes. After trial and error, I feel like it definitely worked out. Would I use an airbrush or a yellow primer can in future? Yes, 100%. If I was doing an army of these, I would just be tempted to get a good yellow spray and absolutely go for it. But obviously this yellow recipe can be used for other areas on your model, not just Imperial Fist armour. So I don't think it's a waste of time. I think it would be useful, and I think that I would use it if I was doing one-off models or competition pieces. If you have a better yellow recipe, fucking keep it to yourself because I've wasted a day on this. No, please let me know in the comments. Or better yet, join the Discord, linked in the description, and show me pictures. Also useful if you'd like any feedback on your painting. Thank you once more. Oh, again, I haven't thanked you already. Thank you for giving me your time and attention, and I'll see you in the next video, especially if you hit subscribe, because then you'll get a notification. I've covered this before. Just hit like and subscribe. Fucking hit like and subscribe. Subscribe. Skip like and subscribe.